Good morning. We are very, very excited to be the first panel of the day. We have an amazing panel here for you today. We are speaking on innovation and how do you leverage all of that innovation to bring and shift solutions to better meet the patient. We have a variety of voices here. We feel that makes for the best panel. Healthcare Center of Excellence, a strategic, a venture capitalist, a startup. And we'll be discussing some of the issues and some of the opportunities in front of us. My name is Lisa Carmel. I lead strategic partnerships at Veranex, and Veranex is a medtech innovation solutions firm. We deliver end-to-end innovation. My other job, my passion is I am on the leadership for MedTech Women. I'm on chair of the advisory board, and in the past few years, I've co-chaired the MedTech Women Annual Summit MedTech Vision. We'll go around and go down the line and introduce ourselves.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Dr. Janani Reisenauer. I'm a thoracic surgeon and interventional pulmonologist and chair of innovation for surgery at Mayo Clinic. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Amanda DePalma. I lead marketing for ultrasound at Siemens Healthineers, and I spend a lot of my time with MedTech Women on the board and work closely with Lisa, and also as the chair of the Women's Executive Network at AdvaMed. So it's great to see everybody. Thanks for getting up early to be here.
Hi, I'm Ashley Seehusen. I am a venture partner at Santé Ventures. I also run our portfolio, we call them our seedling companies, so it's early stage investment. Basically, if we have a thesis, we're not finding what we want to invest in, we'll go out and start the company.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Artunduaga, physician scientist turned CEO of Samay. We are building hardware and software for respiratory health. Happy to be here.
All right, so we are going to kick this off talking about some of the issues and hurdles that we're seeing and shifting those solutions to meet patient needs with Dr. Reisenauer here from the May.
Yeah, so I think the last 2 to 3 years as we've emerged out of COVID have really been an interesting time. There was a rapid resurgence of telemedicine, remote monitoring devices, delivering information and solutions directly to the patient as the consumer as opposed to the healthcare institution, which is historically, it's a change from historical trends, which was industry goes to the healthcare institution and then they disseminate it to the providers and the patients are just the subjects or the volunteers. So it's a little bit of a culture change and a culture shift. We're currently in a technological revolution, and some of the interesting issues that arise is how do these different players get a seat around the table? How does industry and healthcare institutions find a way to work together to bring the best interests of what's best for the patient to the patient, and also let the patient potentially have a seat at the table. And then lastly, in a world where social media is at your fingertips and patients do have access to all of these technologies on their own, who is the best person to help them make decisions in terms of what that accessibility should be to the patient as the consumer as opposed to the provider?
Does anyone else want to jump in?
Sure.
Maria, I think.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the main obstacles that I have also witnessed, especially I really like to tell this story about my grandmother, the originating story of Samay. It's a type of technology that we are actually using to monitor and manage patients with chronic diseases. In the case of respiratory particularly, we are still relying a lot on technologies that are not adequately monitoring or understanding, for example, how the lung is functioning. We are still, for example, relying on devices that have very poor adherence, like 60 to 70% every other week. And we are making a lot of these patients to do like forceful and very difficult maneuvers to try to understand how they are doing. In the case of my grandmother, and I tell this story about her, is because we have witnessed firsthand the problem that we have technologies. For respiratory patients, we do a lot of questionnaires. We are basing most of our medical decisions on subjective data. So I'm really bullish about the idea of capturing the data in a very different or innovative fashion, and that's one of the things that we are doing with Samay.
Oh, you go ahead. I think it's also changing the way we look at companies that we're potentially going to invest in. So a lot of things are moving to the patient's home. How are they reimbursed? Adherence, as you say, is like a huge thing of if it's not an implantable, are they actually going to use it? How long are they going to use it for? Who's going to pay for that? So it's changed the way we looked at startup companies, the technologies that we're considering, and it's kind of a slow evolution.
Yeah, and I think from a manufacturer product development standpoint, the way that we have to think about ease of use, and if we're developing technologies, and as many of you out there are developing technologies, as healthcare moves out of the acute care setting and into clinics and home care, how do we think about usability of our systems so that whether it's in the case of ultrasound, it's still a clinician that needs to capture that image, but not one that has been trained and uses ultrasound all the time, or if it's a patient or a caregiver, how do we make our technology such that you're going to get the same result every time? It's a big consideration as we see the shift in healthcare.
I think it's an interesting point because now if the responsibility to some degree is on the patient to wear a device or to monitor whatever, how responsible does that make the healthcare institution from a malpractice standpoint? It's a really important consideration. And then does compliance factor into that as well? We did a study where we asked patients to go home with a device after surgery, and about 50% of the patients declined the study up front for a variety of reasons. One, the whole Big Brother concept. They're holding their smartphone in their hand and they're telling you, I don't want this device though to tell me where I'm going to be at all times. So that was part of it. Two was they felt like it was invasive and cumbersome, and they didn't want to be, if in their mind it was, if you think I'm healthy enough to go home, then I'm healthy enough to go home. I shouldn't have to wear all this other stuff. So although there is that aspect of the patient populations that are wearing rings and watches and other devices and like that added degree of security, others are not. So can you really force a patient population to do that? Or is that their choice when they're no longer in the hospital?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What do you guys do with all the data you get? This is one of the things that I always worry about is like, oh yeah, we have all this like data that the physicians can monitor patients from remotely. And I'm like, well, who does that? And if you have hundreds of patients, how do you possibly sift through all of that of who's really in trouble and who's not?
Yeah, it's a really hard question because I think it's easier if you're capturing a watch that's just capturing 3 data points, like morning, afternoon, evening, they put it on and they turn on something or other. But if it's continuous waveform monitoring where you're getting terabytes and terabytes of data, and even if you've got 30 patients out there wearing a device that's capturing natural waveforms all throughout the day, you need somebody, and maybe it's not even a somebody, you need a supercomputer to really sit there and evaluate all of that. And that's where data and all these other interesting aspects come in to quickly and rapidly filter that data as to what's a real red flag versus not. And that's a bit of a challenge. I think that everybody recognizes that that's an unmet need, but how we're going to accomplish that is still yet to be determined.
You know, another issue that when we were discussing this earlier, we were talking about funding issues and for startups and the new innovation. And one of the areas that we're seeing is so many startups are bringing this novel, disruptive, or AI solutions and trying to help them figure out how they can, deliver. They can help facilitate better meet the patient needs, but how are they going to get paid? And thus, how are they then going to get funded? And do you want to speak to the funding?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you, Lisa, for bringing that up. So we have a very innovative approach that nobody has ever tried before. We already have 7 patents. But 5 years ago, when I started a company, I started asking a lot of questions to respiratory patients, trying to understand why is that I lost my grandmother. What was the main reason about that? It's very hard to get investors or anyone right from the private market to really give you, any sort of investment on something that it's risky, innovative, and has never been tried before. So, at least for us, and one of the reasons why I'm a cheerleader for all things going non-dilutive funds is that we've been successfully raised almost $2 million from SBIRs. So. It's been a long journey. We were talking about grants just like 5 minutes ago. It takes about a year to get your disbursement. But more importantly, I don't know if my company will will be actually alive today if it weren't for non-dilutive grants. So it's something that it takes time, but it's actually very helpful. And at least for me as a CEO, it has made me a better executive, principal investigator, et cetera, because I really need to think about how I put together a technology, how I validate it, what type of clinical validation or results that I need to bring to the table to start talking to the investors so that they finally are convinced that we have something that is useful for patients.
You know, I was going to say, we're talking about some of the issues, and we're going to move into some of the opportunities, innovations, and so forth. But before we do, Ashley, do you have any advice for Maria when you're out in front with a, how is she going to better attract venture investment?
Yeah, I think part of it is thinking about the back end of it too. I always think about Zeopatch, right? Where initially they were looking at heart arrhythmias, but it wasn't until they really got the business model on the back end where they were delivering decision support, I think initially, and then diagnostics later, et cetera. And they've built this whole service model, and the service model is what makes Zeopatch really different. I think we see a lot of continuous monitoring technologies. Some of them are really differentiated, like yours, and some of them are not. The ones that stand out are the ones that have thought through that back end and how they're actually going to deliver care. And in some ways, I feel like someone should just figure that out and then offer that service to all of you guys, which would be amazing, and I'd invest in that. So,
okay, did everyone hear that? All right. So now we'll shift gears, and we'd like to go down the line here and talk about new innovations that you might be investing in, launching, or observing in this space that you think are, again, addressing patients' needs, shifting the solutions to the patient's needs. I know, who wants to go first?
So I'll answer that, I guess, personally and professionally. So personally, being a thoracic surgeon and an interventional pulmonologist, there's a huge arms race in the lung cancer world right now, looking at novel, innovative ways to deliver treatment for patients with lung cancer. So that's a personal career and research interest of mine, and it's right along the landscape of the next 3 to 5 years. There'll be a lot of interesting innovation coming out of that. In my role as innovation chair for the Department of Surgery, however, I think there's also a huge push on how we're going to start incorporating data and AI to give better, safer treatment for patients who are going to be undergoing surgery. Mayo Clinic is in the process of building a brand new innovative facility, which we hope will go live in about 10 years. So there's a lot of investment and research going into how do we outfit this new facility to meet the best, to continue to serve as a Category of 1 healthcare institution. And like I said, part of that is data and AI, digitization of the operating rooms and what that looks like for surgical patients. More intelligent listening in the clinic setting to capture patients' needs, incorporating healthcare disparities and recognition of an individual patient's social factors and how they recover in their homes with their families. So it's a big, broad answer, but all of those things are pretty exciting to us.
Yeah, and I think from an industry standpoint, as we think about the same things, but for us, it's imperative that we partner with clinicians who are that touch point to the patient to understand what do the clinicians need to better treat, provide better care for patients. And it's so important when we hear words like AI and all the buzzwords right now. At the end of the day, if I'm not solving a problem for Dr. Reisenauer to make it easier for her to see more patients, to diagnose patients faster, it doesn't matter what AI algorithm we're using. And so from an industry standpoint, we're really thinking about what are those algorithms that are going to improve workflow, that are going to, we've got an algorithm that we're working on that will reduce the false negatives from a breast cancer perspective, right? So you reduce anxiety for the patient because you don't have a false negative reading. You allow a focus on the patients that are more likely to have a true positive reading. So you can move patients through faster, and you can get those patients that need that next step of care faster. So it's just, for us, it's really thinking about what do our clinicians need to take better care of that patient, make your lives easier, because there's so much technology right now. I think you said we're in a technology revolution, so it's so easy to want to do everything that's cool, but if it's not making a difference in your ability to care for patients, I don't think it'll ever see the light of day.
Yeah, and I think to kind of follow on to that too is we're trying to figure out how to look at the entire ecosystem, right? So it's not just the new big fun device. It's how does that fit into the flow of surgeons and nurses, et cetera? What data does that bring to the table? What else is required to monitor that? How do you diagnose something? How do you continue to monitor it after surgery, et cetera? So it's sort of figuring out the entire ecosystem of an opportunity and really digging into the new corners and the new things that we're figuring out to make patient experience and physician experience as best as it possibly can be.
I'm really bullish about hospital at home programs. It has been already demonstrated that it's cost effective, frees up beds, alternative source of revenue for hospitals, decreases hospital infections. Patients obviously like to be being managed at home than staying at a hospital. And in order for us to do that, again, I go back to the matter, right? That remote diagnostics, I'm bullish about it because you have the ability to incorporate AI. So in order for you to train a lot of predictive models, you will require a lot of data coming from the actual patients. So either wearables, patches, et cetera, that actually monitor physiological parameters are super important. Then you can, obviously train your algorithms and obviously the backend, right? Like interoperability, APIs, and how we actually create good enough insights for clinicians to actually act upon that data. So I really like it.
And I think the other missing piece here too is CMS and reimbursement of how do we get them in line with these things that bring better patient care. We know that they work. We know that it improves lives, but if it's not reimbursed, how is a company going to make money? So who's going to acquire it, and therefore who's going to fund the startup that's doing it if we don't have reimbursement on the other end?
And I think going back to all of that remote monitoring, it's something that we haven't quite figured out yet, because if you have a technology that can do those things, but you don't have clinical decision-making and judgment behind it, at the end of the day, it's no different than a Sleep Number bed, which I don't sit on their board or anything, but it's fantastic technology. But you open the app and it tells you your sleep score is this, and do this and do that. And I look at it and I'm like, well, who are you to tell me? You're not a doctor, So it really is important to tie it back to, well, what does that mean, right? We can tell you all kinds of stuff, but what does that mean? And who should be the one telling you what it means and what you should do about it?
Sorry, we laugh because we know somebody on the board there.
I mean, yeah. I was going to say, I feel like we're kind of in the wild, wild west of, hey, here's a bunch of data.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Well, so Ashley, I was going to say, is there anything in your portfolio that you want to share? Something you're particularly excited about?
No. I think we're still figuring it out, right? Of a lot of what we invest in is sort of traditional on the medical device side is traditional medical device. We are seeing this bigger overlap between medical device and what we call health tech. So we have 3 different verticals. So we do med tech, health tech, and biotech. But what we're seeing is sort of this creeping back and forth between health tech and med tech, and like med tech that has a health tech component is pretty interesting. But we're still trying to figure it out.
What about AI? I had to ask.
So it's interesting. We do our IPs, like I'm looking at Elizabeth, who's one of our venture fellows, like AI, do a lot of research in it, et cetera. We talk about it a lot. We have one specific AI play right now called Clarity AI, which takes a mammogram and uses AI to give a score on likelihood of progression. It's been really interesting. It's been definitely not our most straightforward project, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, tying 2 themes here. we design and develop, med tech innovations, and pretty much I would say every other call is about a new AI, either an acquisition target or a startup, and they're trying to figure out how are we going to make money? How are we going to get reimbursed?
And that's always the hard part.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is definitely it's a buzzword right now, and it goes back to what problem are you solving? At the end of the day, however you solve that, it could be AI. I mean, frankly, automatic calculations have been behind a lot of imaging and other technology for years. It's been back there helping to calculate measurements, and so I don't think AI for the sake of AI is going to help our clinicians or patients. It's what is the problem that we're looking to solve, and some of the things I see that are most difficult right now, if you look at health workforce shortages, if you look at just not enough beds in the hospital to take care of the patients, solve the make sure that you're talking with your clinicians and that you're understanding their pain points, and then what are the problems that you're solving and how do you solve that? Maybe it's AI, maybe it's something else that you're using to solve it, but AI for the sake of AI, I feel like, I don't know, because I'm on the other end of it, but I feel like you must be inundated with everybody talking about their AI, but what matters to you when we're talking to you about AI?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because sometimes people say, "Oh, we're using AI to do this or AI to do that," and that's great. But like, could you have done the same thing with a large data set review and multivariate regression analysis and gotten the same answer? So like, what is really AI telling you that retrospective data and anecdotal evidence and years of clinical practice isn't telling you? So I think that is an important question, and the distinction between AI and automation that you bring up is a really important question too, because I don't know that AI is really going to solve the workforce shortages and the hospital bed shortages, but is automation play a role there? So I think everything has its place and everything has its niche, but there's not going to be one easy button for all of the problems. And I think just understanding what's the right solution for the right problem is an important question to answer.
Are there any exciting opportunities that you wish or unmet needs, things that you're looking at that you're hoping AI is going to be is going to facilitate or help?
Yeah, I think that that better, smarter decision making is something that AI is going to be helpful. It's not going to replace physician decision making. It's not going to replace anything, but I think of it almost as a virtual assistant when you need it to. And utilizing AI to determine what somebody's expected length of stay is going to be, whether they're going to need a rehab facility to go home to versus are they going to be able to go home? Do you think they're going to need to go home with a drain or not, or this or that, to help the patient understand what at-home recovery is going to be like? There's some interesting aspects there. And then also how AI plays a role within the surgery itself is an interesting question. There's a lot of devices out there that incorporate AI into surgery, but what's really going to change, like if that device wasn't there, would I have done the surgery any differently? Those are the questions that I think are interesting and we'll have to see.
Yeah. I was going to say we also see the training burden and basically I think when you're designing or coming with a new technology, we're hearing, oh my God, if you could I just don't want to look at one more screen. Just give me one less screen to look at, one less step. Let's see. We have a little bit of time here. I was going to say, I know, Maria, yeah, you're out in front as a startup here with a novel technology. Do you have any? We can talk to the startups in the audience, actually all the way down here, and give some advice to the startups that are here. I think there's like 300 startups in the here, and everyone's got a different perspective. I think we got plenty of time. We can talk through, and we might. I don't know if we're taking questions, but if you'd like to go through and everyone give some advice to the startups that we have in the audience.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. We've done fairly well.
Hey, Maria.
Maria.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's a question that I get asked a lot. I'm sorry. this way. We have done fairly well over the past few years, raising funds from the federal government, especially. We outsource most of our platform development to Latin America, to Colombia, where I'm from originally. We have 14 people there. I would have to say that two things that I would highly recommend is to obviously be very persistent or stubborn. I always call that to be my superpower. Be very stubborn, be resourceful, always try to get a yes, regardless of like if they obviously say no, as most of the times. Find another way to figure out the problem, to get to the right solution. And obviously being very resourceful in a way that creative, right? The way how you not only are innovating with the technology that you are creating or your product, but how you solve the issues or problems every single day. Relying on a good network of founders, like I have a lot of chats on WhatsApp for people that I have on my literally in my phone that I can text with questions. It's something extremely important too, because putting together, building a startup coming from the scientific clinical world, to me, something completely new. And honestly, it's something that you learn day by day entirely from gossip. Like, really, that's how you do these things. I don't know a lot of things day by day. I always listen to other people, do a lot of qualitative research and customer discovery, and come up with a solution after talking to at least 3 to 4 people. So that's what I do.
Yeah. Let me just add on to that of just like being a CEO is a really hard job. Yeah, as a founder, and just surrounding yourself with people who are supportive and realizing it's really hard. And, when the buck stops with you and, you need people to talk to because it's not always going to be your team, et cetera, because sometimes you're the one who needs to make that decision. So, yeah, sorry.
I remember when we were talking a few years ago, right?
Yeah. I would say from my perspective, just really thinking through, I think we keep talking about what's the problem you're solving for who, and then I think who's going to pay for it, and making sure that's really clear in your pitch deck. So you should be answering that question like in your first couple of slides, and making sure that you understand you understand your value proposition, and it's very, very clear. Raising money is hard, so don't give up.
I'll speak from a strategic standpoint. I think if you're looking for potential exit, funding, partnership from a strategic, make sure you do your research. Understand the business priorities of that strategic. So for example, at Siemens Healthineers, we're looking at cancer care pathways. We're focused on CV, neuro. If you're not playing in those spaces, at a meeting like this, don't waste your time trying to reach out to me just because I have a Siemens Healthineers badge. If you are, though, reach out. But tell me what problem you're solving and tell me how you can do that differently. At a big company, innovation gets stifled. We need startups in our ecosystem to be able to truly innovate and think boldly, take those chances. But tell me how that helps our business and helps us solve problems for our customers. For the strategics out there, be that voice. I mean, I think we all owe each other in the ecosystem being that voice for someone. Share your experience, share what you know, make connections, help people connect here. I think it takes all of us working together to fix our healthcare system and solve these difficult problems that we're trying to solve.
I think from our standpoint, I'm lucky to work at a healthcare institution that has some of the best and brightest minds in the world working at the #1 hospital. And there's a wealth of information there. And there is a passion to partner, and there's a passion to work together. I think people are less enthusiastic about just trying a product in the OR or trying a product in the clinic, because we get inundated with those requests every day. And it's a lot harder to be invested and passionate and render an opinion where somebody comes to you and says, oh, I've got this really great device. Would you be willing to try it in 5 or 10 patients and let us know what you think and give us iterative feedback? I mean, that's fine, but there's a lot of people that want those requests, and it's hard for us to take time out of our practice and our day to be invested in those. Where we really feel like we're co-collaborating, co-developing with you, lending our IP and our expertise to really make this a problem that answers an unmet need, that's when we also feel like we have skin in the game and stake in the game to make sure that the device or the product is successful. So I think it's important to reach out for that clinical expertise early and seek a partnership early. And Mayo is very interested in exploring those opportunities and very eager to do that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the Mayo Clinic Bears Surgical Innovation Summit.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. So we have an annual Innovation Summit conference that's now in its third year. We're officially in the potty training phase. We're no longer a baby anymore. We're a toddler. But we do invite startups, investors, strategics alike who are innovating in surgical innovation. We're fortunate to have over 300 members from industry present last year. We have approximately 70 to 80 surgeons in attendance from our Department of Surgery. And really the goal is to understand how we can strategically work together and co-develop together and do important first-in-human work together as well, if applicable. One of the highlighted segments of last year specifically is we had co-presentations between a Mayo surgeon and a startup who sought each other out early, and then through the involvement of our Mayo Clinic Ventures group, we're able to actually execute a deal and are now working together to bring products to the market. So that was a really exciting component of that program, and we hope to continue that. And thank you for chairing that steering committee on the industry side. And we'll be doing it again this year in November.
You know, I think this ties to why we're bringing a lot of the people here on this stage, because all of us are interconnected, and we're either a part of the leadership of MedTech women, or we're partnering with the Mayo. Scott Pentel, Henry Peck of LSI are also on the steering committee, as is MedTech Innovator, to try and identify startups that we think would be ideal candidates for the Mayo to consider and partner. So for the startups in the room, lean in and look to get involved with some of those organizations, whether it's MedTech Women, MedTech Color. If you'd like to hear more about the Mayo Clinic and their Surgical Innovation Summit, if you're in the room or listening, please reach out to Dr. Reisenauer or Neer Goldenberg, or any of the steering committee here. And let's see, I think we are close to being at time. Are we taking questions, or are we not doing questions? We're almost out of time.
We've got one big question. No pressure, but who's got the one big question? Mr. Canali, Roger. Anybody got one? Come on. Yep, here we go.
What is the best way to find the investment thesis for the interest in the strategics? You mentioned 3 categories you're interested in. How about everybody else?
So let me repeat the question, since I think you're recording. The question was, what's the best way to find the interest of the large strategics? Oftentimes on the website. I think if you go to the website, you'll often see the business areas of focus, or if you go to the investor slide decks, they'll talk about their areas of focus in the quarterly earnings release. So typically in the larger companies, you'll be able to find that on the website and align to those.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
And do exactly this. Come listen and get
Yeah.
engaged with each other and hear these conversations and then meet afterwards.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and Scott, no, that's very, I think I said that last year, and I'm sorry I didn't repeat it this year. It's super important. These meetings are the best place to meet up. That's why Scott has this meeting. It's to bring the ecosystem together with the startups, the investors, the strategics, the clinicians, because it's these conversations and this ecosystem that we're here to meet. So be at meetings like this and listen and get up on stage. We'll come to your pitch as well. I mean, that's why we're here. So.
Thank you. And a round of applause for these amazing panelists.